now that he lives in the UK, like it's so strange, but he recognizes how people can grow up without that love and without the interconnectedness of his original culture. Yeah, so basically modern society has created the so many of the ills that we're dealing with because it created the structures and the systems that we have.
Mm.
Right? There are companies that don't need to exist, that solve a problem that we created that doesn't need to exist. Hierarchy, the way it's designed, using money to pay people instead of, I mean, defining success the way that we do, that is not progress. That's anti-progress. Like people want fame. And someone asked me recently, when did I start to become a brand? And I just looked at them and I said, it's funny you say that because I have slides going back 20 years with the cover of Harvard Business Review and Fast Company magazine that talk about the brand of you. And I say, I use this to talk about how to not be. Don't be a brand. Be a human being.
Lovely Marcy Axelrod. We're here for part 2 to talk about how to really show up. In part 1, we spoke about the concept of truly showing up, what it means. She gave a few examples. She also gave a process of how to align yourself to showing up. And today I'm aligning with her, with my head, full alignment in vision and spirit. Hi, Marcy. Welcome again.
Serena, thank you so much for having me. Really great to be back.
Totally my pleasure. I've been yearning for this second part of the talk where we are gonna be speaking about the research that you've made on how we choose to show up, which was the research that you based for the writing of your book. You spent 20 years on this research.
Right.
I'm gonna let you
Yes.
take it from here, whether you want to tell me about the research or take it away from here. I'll give you the first question.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when I was doing strategy management consulting in Silicon Valley with KPMG Consulting, there's often global research that start each engagement, and we had the chance to ask hundreds of thousands of people basic questions about how they achieve things, what gets in their way, how they feel they can achieve things better. And ultimately, the consistency around the world was just remarkable. And yet, when you try to put into place what people think are things that'll help them achieve more, it doesn't always work. So it was very clear to me that there's something missing regarding how we're showing up and how we're choosing to show up. And the reality is most of us aren't actually choosing the fundamental aspect of how we show up, which is how we attend to the world. And how we attend to the world is based on the whole set of beliefs that we have about how the world works and about what's going on. And we don't necessarily recognize that we have two systems of attending. We have a left hemisphere and a right. They create fundamentally different realities for us. And our society today defaults us to this less human, lonely, separate, disjointed, part-based, abstracted, disconnected world. And we see this to be true in the mental health statistics that are out there, in the fact that, something like 65% of people are lonely, the fact that we're defaulting to our screens instead of looking into each other's eyes and truly feeling what each other truly is experiencing. So all the symptoms are out there, right? There's a reason that our both 19th and 21st Surgeon General in the US wrote a book, not about cancer or about obesity. He wrote a book called Together. So Vivek Murthy is his name, and he deemed the #1 crisis in America, and I believe this to be true across the globe, is that people don't feel connected with others, with society, And of course, the roots of that are that we don't feel interconnected within ourselves. And this is the root of what we're, ideally choosing when we show up. So there's a couple of slides that I just want to use to kind of anchor us to launch into what truly showing up is. And of course, we're going to go a couple levels deeper than we did in our first podcast. Zarina, do you mind putting the first slide up?
Yeah, may I ask you something before I do so regarding the lack of reconciliation within us?
Yes.
Is the way you perceive it, the lack of reconciliation between the type of thinking that is produced by the left and the right hemispheres of the brain? Yes.
Yes, it is. And I also immediately, by the way, want to connect this with, there's a lot of discussion right now about how we have a traumatized society, a traumatized world, right? All the wars from the past, all of the grief and suffering from when humans evolved is existing within us. And we are starting to be very much aware that in the schools, we need to kind of teach in such a way that resets the nervous system of the students so that we can learn. Because without safety, we can't relate to others.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most important things here to insert, which is the foundation of this, is that without safety within ourselves, we can't relate to others. So what I'm saying might sound like an abstract set of concepts from the outside world in a framework that I'm imposing, but my background is psychology. And the foundation of the model is not just evolutionary biology, but it's also neuroscience, right? So there's very much of a depth of how within our human body are we designed to exist, and how does that then turn us toward the outside world so that we can then truly have the life that we want, have the depth of relationships that we want, have the success in business, etc., that we want.
Yes. So one last comment before I open up your slides. I recently had a guest, unfortunately, I can't remember who exactly it was, but he was speaking about exactly what you touched upon, which was the generational inherited fear from all the world wars. So he was speaking
Right.
specifically about the world wars, but clearly we have the history behind that we are carrying in our genes in terms
Yes.
of
Right.
built up fear and
Talk about
epigenetics.
that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I specifically have pages on a number of the sources of just like, why do we just show up? And I specifically point to that. It's in our genes, and if it's not healed, we pass it on down, which is what we're doing. And there are a lot of, there's rat studies and all sorts of things that I also reference in the book that talk about how this takes place. But first, let's just explain what is showing, what is just showing up.
Opening up your slides. All right.
Yeah. Go up 2 slides if you would to what is showing up.
Is this the one?
Nope, go to slide number 1. Sometime, yeah, so one more, yeah. So I ground us in a circle, and I ground us in the colors of the rainbow because this is natural. And what I'm trying to do is kind of create an icon that kind of stays in people's minds. So first, what is showing up? And then the very next slide is what are we choosing? If you would switch to that. Okay, so let me get into that right now. Let's go to slide 3. So at a very simple level, right, everything in nature has inherent levels of quality, 1, 2, 3. We know when we're barely there. We know when we're truly showing up, but what is this middle level? So there are 3 levels of showing up. I could have imposed, 10 levels or 5 or 2, but I think that 3 is really crucial because everything seems to have a high, medium, low that people can relate to. To summarize, right, barely there, I think people can understand. You're disengaged, you're burned out, you're grieving, you're sick. There's something that's just taking over what you're choosing to attend to, such that you can't really be who you want to be. There are valid reasons for showing up barely there, but ultimately we want to get out of it. If we're depressed, if we're anxious, if anxiety has kind of taken control, ultimately what we want to do is not be barely there very often, less than 10% of our time. And I talk about in the book how to kind of break out of it when it takes control of us. Because what we're really doing is we're stuck with the mirror facing in, and everything in our head is reverberating, and we get stuck. And that's when kind of we aren't at all living the life that we want to live. And we aren't there for other people in the way that we want to be. Let's get to just showing up and truly showing up. Truly showing up, as people can imagine, this is when you're living the life that you want. Your legacy is going to make you proud. Your relationships have a depth because you are able to presence with others, with ideas, with vistas, with what is there, in a way that you can receive it and you let it affect you. And you are able to sit with the feeling in your body and really understand what it is. And then from there, without it controlling you, from there, you can then make a choice. How am I choosing to interact with this? You can often put a label on it. So you are going from your embodied system, your sensing system, right into your limbic system, and then into your frontal cortex, and you can make a decision. It can be layering on your rational decision system on top of the beauty and interconnectedness of our limbic system and our sensing system. And by our senses, I mean our body, right? Touch, taste, smell. Because we're able to sit with it, we're able to also make use of not just our intuitive system, but the kind of imagination that goes with it. What if this? I'm curious about that. What might this also be telling me? Right? Because ultimately, the hierarchy of perception starts with intuition. Something is coming through our senses. We can perceive it, let's say from another person. What do they feel? It is immaculate that it comes like through the ether to us, right? Based on how someone is sitting, how still they are, their breath, their temperature. These are all things that we can perceive. The intensity of their gaze. If it's an idea in a book, the same thing happens. We can then perceive that. And ideally, we perceive it with a depth of presence that an intuitive reality is alive within us. From the intuition, then we get to the imagination of what does this mean? And then from there, we can get to our rational mind, our cognition. So truly showing up uses much more of the right hemisphere, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But it's very different from just showing up. I'm going to switch now to level 2, just showing up. So this morning, picture yourself in bed. You are getting out of bed now, and what do we do? So I'm going to ask you, Zarina, when you wake up, like what's the common path?
All right. So I have a different schedule for the past 3 months since I have a dog. So the dog wakes me up at 6 o'clock or 5:45. So I usually get up and walk it in the dark.
Okay.
Then I go to bed and I try to meditate. If I'm undisturbed, I manage to meditate for up to an hour. Maybe sometimes I fall asleep. Sometimes I actually manage to meditate.
Loving that.
Then I go about my day. I sometimes, if I get up on time, help my child to prepare for school. And then I usually get ready and start working. Depending on what I have to do, sometimes I rebound on a trampoline. Yeah.
Very
Like
interesting. Okay, got it. So
yeah.
so basically there's a bunch of activities, there's a bunch of actions.
Yeah.
Right. So we wake up and get stuff done. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Important stuff. Meditate, tend to your dog, help your child. These are important things. What we're not doing is paying attention to the 99.999% of everything else that's going on. We're laser focusing on a few small things. Now, granted, these are some of the most important things, but we're also missing how unbelievable is it that when you woke up, you're able to open your eyes, you're able to move your body, you're able to see. Maybe there's a significant other there. Maybe you're in a beautiful place. Maybe the air is clean. Maybe the sun is doing all the magic that the sun is doing. We are not attending to all the rest.
Oh, this
And
I'm
while this might
doing.
not be a bad
This
thing,
I'm doing when I go
wait,
out.
what?
I always appreciate whether I see the stars right now at this time of the year or the sunrise. Yes, or the freshness of the crisp air. No, I do appreciate everything about nature when I go out.
So that is amazing. The main point for most of us is that in life today, existing outside of nature, within a home, within a controlled environment, hopefully most of us are waking up in a safe place. There's a bed, there's a sink, there's a toothbrush, right? There's clothes, there's food. What I'm bringing our attention to is that we very much mechanically move through the moments of our lives getting stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
We are often less so, even those who meditate, like which both of us do, we are often less so recognizing the fullness of what's there in a way that reconnects us with the more. And in that mechanistic, just get it done mode, we are very much living in the left hemisphere of our brain, which narrows our focus down. The science is now showing that it's about 3 degrees of perception out of the 360 degree, real world that we're in. Now, in that mode, it's very much of a grab it and get it done, check the box type of existence. It's a bit of autopilot. It's a bit of sleepwalking. And we very much needed this to stay alive. So the way this whole thing evolved is when we were out in nature of evolving hundreds of thousands of years ago, we would, let's say, see a rabbit. I'm going to go and capture that rabbit and kill that rabbit and bring it back as food. And we would absolutely narrow in on that. And everything about our body and our attention system was about having control over that. It didn't matter if over on the horizon, maybe there were really, really dark storm clouds. And really the most important thing was going to be to get back to our tribe and say, we need to, batten down the hatches and prepare for a storm. But we don't notice any of what's going on, be it a predator in the brush, because we're in the mode of, there's that thing, and I'm going to get it, and I'm going to control it, and I'm going to have power over it. And the amazing territory of land around us literally becomes flat, and it becomes a map. Because the nuance of how the grass is growing in a certain meadow on the side doesn't matter. So it becomes a map, and it is literally an abstraction. It almost becomes fake, and it becomes dead. So everything outside of the mode of attention, when we're in just get it done mode, disappears. So now you're in a meeting with somebody, and you have this agenda, and you want to get your agenda through because the deal has to be structured a certain way. And if it's not structured a certain way, all these bad things are going to happen, or the client won't sign on the dotted line, or whatever it may be. The child won't get to soccer practice on time if this doesn't happen. The meal has to be prepped, the shoes have to be in the bag, whatever it may be. When we're in that mode, we are literally unable to connect with the more that's out there. So if there's something that's meaningful that we can add to that flow, it's not going to show up for us. The meaningful things that we can do to relate more deeply, let's say with our daughter who's going to the soccer practice, or with the colleague in the meeting, or with that new person who we just met. The deeper way of relating to the human being is not available to us. And we will not have that chance to bond with them, to learn about them, to feel what they feel, to enrich our lives. Because we're just showing up with our default system in the left hemisphere, leading us. That is just showing up. And what my research shows is that 80% of us are in this just show up mode 80% of the time. 50 to 60%, more than enough. What we're trying to do is not so much leave it behind. What we're trying to do, using this framework, is notice and to choose. We have to just show up and just get stuff done. A lot of the time before this podcast, I wanted to fill my water bottle. I went and I grabbed the bottle and I filled the bottle and I brought it upstairs, right? And I got this done. And it wouldn't have done me that much good to kind of look at it and think, wow, water is the most amazing thing. And look at how it's reflecting the sunlight and how incredible that my hands seem larger when I look toward. It wouldn't have been helpful, right? However, if I'm trying to actually have some kind of novel thought and think for my team in a new way about how we can approach this given market space, or do something new with our sales process, or kind of, decorate our home in a different way, whatever it might be, that novelty of bringing the fullness of our creativity to the moment won't happen unless we're able to pause and to shift. Now, here's what's really insidious about staying and just showing up. The life that you want is over here, and the just show up, get it done mode is over here. And they're different because we don't feel life has meaning when we're just showing up. So move us to the next slide, if you will. And this shows some of my research.
Were you seeing the slide until now? Because I wasn't sharing.
No, this is perfect. This is perfect. So, when I say this in front of, when I'm giving a speech and there's hundreds of people, every single time people laugh. And then I pause. And I say, we're laughing, but we all know that this is sad. And part of our laughter is because we're uncomfortable. And it's kind of easing the discomfort of this. So in essence, what this is saying is, at work, right, because it's less emotional, and I don't have kind of, a pissed off teenager to deal with, and all sorts of other things. At work, I truly show up far more often. To my kids in my parenting role, because it can be so emotionally rich and they can be dysregulated, they can be difficult, I probably end up just showing up more often than I want. And then my partner pretty much gets whatever is left. And that's what the research shows. And, people relate to it. Not once have I been told, I kind of recognized that this was going on a number of years ago, and my marriage started to go south. And when I decided to bring more of my relational being, right, the way of attending with my right hemisphere to the most important relationships of my life, everything changed, right? But people have told me after they've heard me speak that that's exactly what happens. I want us to go down one more slide because I want to get into how do we truly show up? Because this is so much deeper than you think. It's not just a concept. We exist in 3 roles. So on the left side of this chart, what I want to explain is that we're in a self role, and that's very much what I've been speaking about, but I've also been laying it out within a context, of what happens in the morning or when you walk into a meeting. These are the situations of our lives. They show up to us, but they also show up with us and for us. And I'm about to explain that. And then there's a societal role. We are part of a tribe. We are part of a community. We are part of a family, a company, a town, a country, a planet. There is so much going on that creates the choices that make us become who we are. And everything that we do filters back into the system and reverberates through. So we are societal members, situation members, and selves all at once. And I want you to feel the weight of this, because what we do impacts others 3 levels deep through our friends. So the work of Nicholas Christakis, and I mentioned this in both of my TED Talks because it is so important. He's a physician. He's been at Yale, I don't know, a dozen years before that at Harvard. And what his research shows is that the 20 people who we spend the most time with are actually 45% more likely to do what we do than those who we don't spend as much time with. Now, 45%. And so this is how you walk into a room. It's the quality of your attention. It's whether you care in a way that really helps the person feel felt. This is what you're doing that person is then bringing into the 20 people who they're with, right? And if it's negative, if you just show up and you're just like, oh my God, like I just can't get this shit done. Like my job is just this and I've got to quit. That negative energy is also moving, but it isn't just your energy. It's your thoughts that you're sharing. It's your emotions. It's your beliefs. So it's thoughts, feelings, and actions. Everything is moving through those 20 people. So let's say your best friend's spouse. Now that person is 25% more likely to do what you do because it goes through your best friend into that person's spouse now. And then the spouse takes it to someone who they work with, who is now 10% is likely to do what you do. It goes 3 people deep, 45%, 25%, and then 10%. So someone who you don't even know, who you will never meet, is 10% more likely to think, feel, and act the way that you do by virtue of your showing up a certain way. So it is incumbent upon all of us here to feel that responsibility. How are we choosing to show up right now? It matters.
Marcy,
So once again,
do you mean showing up in terms of the awareness of showing up? Or do you mean showing up in this case with the gentleman that you mentioned was also included in the research of your book? Do you mean that this ripple effect is of what they do or of the way they show up?
The way we show up, our thoughts, feelings, and actions, right, which are created by the beliefs that we have, right, about
so this is the reflection. Thoughts, feelings, actions, and beliefs are reflected and trickle down to
in our behavior, how we show up, literally our present to everything. Mm-hmm. Everything about us is changing those who we encounter. And a lot of people have lost the sense that we matter, that we have an impact. They think that we're all just inert, and we don't touch each other and feel it. That's completely untrue. We are impacting the world at every moment. And actually, there is a chart, and I know you said that the charts don't show up, so I will send you this. And it says me, you with we in the middle. Me and you with we in the middle. We very much are a we, and I'll send you this to put in your show notes. And the way that it happens is through a situation. It says self, situation, society. Our 3 roles merge, like in the moment of our experiential reality. That is a situation. And what I'd like to do is actually read to you the definition of what a situation is, because most people don't actually recognize the profoundness of what a situation is. So I'm going to read this. A situation is an active encounter. It's not passive and it's not simple. What's going on when we're in our left hemisphere is it is representing what happened in the past, because that's all that this hemisphere can do. But really what's going on when you're not so locked there is that there is this reverberative, alive, back and forth going on where you impact me and I impact you, and you impact me and I impact you, because we're feeling each other and sensing, what is the person doing, right? Are they like this? Are they like this? What is the world doing? Is it opening us? Is it closing us, right? So we are reverberating in a way, like responding to what's going on. So we presence to, with, and for the situation of what's going on, and it and everyone in it presences to, with, and for us, whether it knows it or not, right? And this can be a voting booth, right? But everything is there impacting us. So quite plainly, what a given situation is depends on who is attending to it and how. So if we're able to attend with our open system, which is the only one that perceives anything new, the right hemisphere actually starts from a place of wholeness and perceives what is new that is truly going on, versus this part that sees something and says, yep, I got it. I know what that person's going to do. I know what this thing is. I know, right? There's a wall there. There's a book here. Nothing really to attend to. When we're able to actually attend in a way that sees what is new, we are then able to show up in a way that is thoughtful, that we choose, as opposed to defaulting, which is what just showing up is. So it says every past experience, every expectation, every value, bias, hope, fear, prejudice, and belief about how the world works that we have is going to show up with us when we're just showing up, just getting stuff done, get it in, get it done mode, which is that level 2, just showing up. And then we create how that moment shows up to us. Okay. So our ability to leave such baggage behind, right? The biases, the prejudice, requires that we're able to reset ourselves so that we can truly show up with our right hemisphere.
What
so
you're
just to finish
is
this,
that we are repeating our old patterns if we're going on the just showing up mode, if we're going about our lives.
right? Our default mode
Our default mode.
leaves everything showing up the way it did in the past,
I see.
fulfilling an expectation,
Yeah.
but we're not really seeing what's happening. We're not truly living in the real world, right? Yeah. So you hopefully won't think about a situation
Are you going to read
again.
a little bit more, or because I also have another question?
I have just 2 sentences, and then I want to hear what your question is. It says, over time, the reverberative dance of the situation creates who we are and who everyone is and what everything is that is around us. So we are creating our lives by how we show up, right? And we're also creating how others are showing up and how they experience us and how we experience them. So literally our entire lives are created by how we show up.
You started this conversation by showing some or sharing some statistics of how lonely and isolated societies have become, we as people have become. And somebody else brought up statistics that in the US, an average male has approximately 1 friend.
Right, right. And feels lonely. Yeah.
It's so,
Well, so most well, I shouldn't say most. Yeah, there is a very large, in fact, potentially a majority of men who when you ask them a question, it's something like, when you're really in a time of need, who would you go to? There's no obvious person who comes to mind.
yeah. So my
So
question
the
is,
answer is
where
like
are these 20
zero.
people that we are rippling our energy to and are showing up? Who are
Yes.
these 20 people when we don't have that many people in our everyday lives? It's not like we live in a
So
village with all of our families.
right. So the research that Nicholas Christakis did found the circle of 20 people. It includes your family, your friends, the people at work, and the people in the community who you spend time with. That research does go back a number of years, and it very well may be that instead of 20, especially with the pandemic, our circles got far more concentrated. So it very well may be that now our circle is 7 to 10 people.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it still goes out three layers deep. So if it's 20, you get to 20 times 20 times 20. So you get to 8,000 people who you're impacting every moment of every day. Even if it's 10 people in the immediate circle, each of whom have 10 of their own, who are 25% more likely to do what you do. Now you're up to 100 people. And by the time that goes further, each of those 100 have 10 people. So you're still at 1,000 people who are 10 times more likely to do what you're doing, thinking, feeling, the way you behave,
Yeah.
all of that. So, I mean, bottom line is we matter. Our
Mhm.
impact is massive, right? So let's think about how we're showing up. And we can, if you want to, we can get into now some of the ways to just reset ourselves to be able to switch which attention system leads how we're showing up.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, sure. I was just
I
wondering,
did,
I was just, before we move
yeah.
on, are you actually stating that if we start to show up, we are actually impacting those people and they start showing up from their small percentages that they pick up from us?
Yes, I am literally saying when we change how we show up, we are literally impacting 1,000 people around us at all times. When we show up with that level of quiet receptivity of our bodies so that we can truly attune to you as a person or to an idea that we come into contact with. When we change, we're changing that person, we're changing the world. We absolutely are. The divisiveness, the war, the sentiment in society, like the ideas in the zeitgeist that are out there hitting us from our every kind of article that we read online, all of that will literally start to shift as we change how we show up. Because the moment someone feels care, they feel felt. And this is actually on the next slide. When they feel felt, then they change how they show up. There's a skill for each role, and that's what we didn't get into. Stay on slide 5 for just a minute.
Is this slide
No,
5?
yeah, because there's a skill for each role, right? If you really want to truly show up, right, be more grounded in yourself. And I have a chapter on each of these. Be more ready for your situations. I talk about what readiness really is, and be more connected with intent to serve. And there's a word I put on that, which is all intelligent in our societal role. Let's put that on the side now. People can certainly read about it in my book because I want to get into the whole care process on slide 6. Yeah. So the way the brain and the body works is that when we're in get it done mode, we don't so much notice what's going on and we don't tune in to those 357 degrees of life that are out there. We focus on this like a 3-degree thing, right? I'm going to take that plate out of the dishwasher. I'm going to put it on the shelf, right? It's a very focused thing. The more we can open ourselves and engage that right hemisphere by quieting our body, quieting our mind, breathing, slow exhales, all of that, that opens up our senses to perceive more, And all of a sudden things change. We notice things will just show up that existed that we didn't see. We start to notice more, and then we can tune in to the more, right? So I'm on that continuum on the bottom. Then we start to feel what's going on. We feel more alive. Then we start to enact care. But those things that are in the green, the feeling with and enacting care, aren't available to us because the more that's out there isn't even showing up, which is why we start to feel disengaged and dim and lonely and separate from, right? So this is how things work. And we start to move from an individual where all this, like everything is inside of us and the world is competitive and it's right. And we have to be a brand and get our name out there and all this crap, right? We move away from that to being more of an all individual. So getting back to the studies from 20 years ago, the way that people recognize they succeed is by helping others, by taking, that 30 minutes out of their day to actually help someone else with their presentation, with designing the solution for their client, right? As opposed to just sticking with kind of, the set of clients that maybe you're paid to focus on. Also help the colleague with the people who they're focused on. This is how you win. We are much more of a shared, success happens with to and for others. It doesn't happen when our boundary stops with our skin, with our skull, and we're shut down in this level 2 just showing up. I'm saying a lot of different things, but I'm hoping.
What did you mean by
Yeah.
success happens with 3 or 4 others? What does that mean?
Yeah. So we are not designed to be individuals focused on the I, me, mine default mode of our brains. We are not designed to survive that way. If we lived that way thousands of years ago, we died because we were the ones left behind. We were the ones that the predators killed. Okay, in coordinated action with others in a group, humans were be able to survive when there was the mastodons and tiger, right? We only survived through deep integration and care for and with others. And the illnesses of society today, right? The reason 65% of teen girls are on SSRIs and, we feel depth of anxiety, and have the kind of disorders of modern life is because modern life has taught us through the language that we use and through the structures of hierarchy and being in jobs that aren't meaningful and all of that has taught us and incented us to compete against others and to compete against the world and to feel like the environment, even that word, it makes no sense. The environment is if we're here and the environment's there. Like what? We are of the earth, right? Just like an apple tree apples, the earth peoples, right? We come out of the universe either through a kind of divine design or through natural evolution, like whichever way we believe, it doesn't matter. It's all consistent. We are designed to thrive and survive in deep relationality with each other and attuning to each other's needs, meaning that we feel with. And when you feel with, you naturally enact care. And it's not a sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice. It feels generous and it fuels us.
Would you say that the natural 3-4 people that we are most drawn to are the family unit, or not necessarily? Is this the natural design of things that we naturally enact care with these 3-4 people and care for them? that these are the family in the.
So it doesn't stop there. I mean, the way that humans are designed, when you actually look at the physiology that we have, you look into the eyes of a stranger and you feel them just as deeply. And for the people out there who have engaged in activities, maybe it's as simple as at a karaoke bar where you're all singing Piano Man by Billy Joel and your arms are around. We have all, hopefully, at some point in our lives, felt the unity that creates a oneness. We are designed to feel that far more often, and we are designed to live within that lens of perception, where we are truly feeling others and feel one with others and kind of look at a stranger and can say, I love you. And it's like live from the heart. That is how we survived as a species, and that's how we're designed to live. And I'm hoping that just putting it on paper, like the model, shows that our role as a member of society, which comes alive through the moments that I called a situation. I'm hoping that this is making sense, because it only becomes real in how we show up to each moment.
Yeah. However, we are not alone in society. There are other people that also put out their levels of showing up. And I am saying this because when it comes to giving and receiving, for example, you're being out there for people, but in some societies, because this is not the accepted mode of living, they will not reciprocate. There is no concept of reciprocation. It is just like, oh, I'm getting something for free, or yes, I'm getting this free advice, or it's the usage of whatever is available to you, be it energy, materials. And so it's the consumerism, right? And so I'm saying this because I come from Bulgaria, and the mode of operation there is still different. It's not completely as consumer-based as in the Western world. So people are very much community-oriented. So that once you would pay the bill, once somebody else would pay the bill.
Yeah, I'm very glad you're bringing this up. Yeah, I mean, was there a specific question, or should I just share what was on my mind?
My question is how to show up fully in a society that is not ready to reciprocate.
Right. Yeah. So reciprocity and symbiosis are both profound topics in the book, because we're designed to live much more of a reciprocal and symbiotic life. When you think about trees, and there was work done, Jessica, I'm going to forget her last name, who literally showed that within a forest, if you give radiation to a tree over here, it literally goes through the roots to a tree, like way, way, way miles away on the other side of the forest. And that when you have trees on the other side that don't have a certain amount of needed, let's say, nitrogen in the soil, what you find out is that trees way over there recognize that and are giving nitrogen through the roots of hundreds and hundreds of trees, getting it to the other one. So, and then ultimately they literally are interlinked under the soil. So humans are designed to be that way as well. And it's incredible that there are parts of the world where society really is more that way. There are still places in Africa. I was speaking with a gentleman from Nigeria who didn't have running water or electricity in his home. And yet from the moment you could walk, even without shoes, you went out with the older kids up to the hills, and you took the goats and the cows, and you were all there, and you were playing there all day, tending the goats and the cows, and kind of noticing all sorts of indicators in the land about, should we go down to the stream over here or the lake over there, like based on how the grass was doing and the different bushes, how they seemed. You would then take your direction about where to lead the herds, and everyone cared. There was just love. it was love across the ages and across like the kids. It was kids from a community that was far from a city. And everyone was just together. There was a oneness, and they were all your kind of brothers and sisters, even though they were from different parents. So there was a collaborativeness um, in the air and in your world, and everybody just helped each other. And I think in the school, I don't even know that it was split in grades by age. Like everybody just kind of walked the 5 miles barefoot to school each day and walked back, and no one kind of. And he was saying that now that he lives in the UK, like it's so strange, but he recognizes how people can grow up without that love and without the interconnectedness of his original culture. Yeah, so basically modern society has created the so many of the ills that we're dealing with because it created the structures and the systems that we have.
Mm.
Right? There are companies that don't need to exist, that solve a problem that we created that doesn't need to exist. Hierarchy, the way it's designed, using money to pay people instead of, I mean, defining success the way that we do, that is not progress. That's anti-progress. Like people want fame. And someone asked me recently, when did I start to become a brand? And I just looked at them and I said, it's funny you say that because I have slides going back 20 years with the cover of Harvard Business Review and Fast Company magazine that talk about the brand of you. And I say, I use this to talk about how to not be. Don't be a brand. Be a human being. I'm not a brand. I've never thought about being a brand. I've never thought about my life this way. We exist just to help each other be good people and to make the world a better place. That's why we exist, to care for each other. So I'm going to stop there.
Do you have a view of how things should start to unfold or untangle from the state of being that we are now? What I mean by that is, yes, people, there are certain societal structures, institutional structures, and we are abiding by them in society.
Yeah.
Go to school, people still do that. Yes, in some rural areas, or people that have chosen to live otherwise, homeschool their kids, but the majority still abide by the created structures. Is there a way we can circumvent all of that and still feel connected and like we are in the energy of love with the people around us? We are
yeah. So I mean, hopefully in my book I've given a recipe for that. It has to be an individual's choice about how we each choose to behave and show up. And from there, hopefully the decisions that we make, the systems that we create, the core curriculum of a country, let's say, will start to shift to one that instead of creating competition shows you that you will succeed only with that person and with this group of people and with the joint decision making that is driven from a place of knowing that we're all going to go down together if we don't help each other and truly feel with each other, right? In high school in America, it's very common where like you meet kids at a very young age and then everybody's typecast. And Jane, I know Jane. And even though Jane is 16 now, and we kind of met when we're 6, I know who she is and I've judged her. And I don't need to be friends with her and she doesn't need to sit with me at the lunch table. I have a daughter who just came back from almost a year of growth at a kind of mental health center in Missouri. And I told her, you need different friends now. And it was very hard. And I don't know that she can get through her head the fact that these 100 kids who you're coming back to, they aren't who they were. You aren't who you were. And they're not who they were. And even though they didn't go through potentially the intensity of growth process that you went through, where you had to shed beliefs about how the world works and a sense of self that you didn't have. And like, but you need to truly feel with someone, and then you can ask them, like, how was it for you when this happened, this thing that you just mentioned? Or, hey, I'm noticing that you aren't so happy. Do you want to talk to me about what's going on? Or just, I'm here for you. That changes everything. One quick thing that I want to mention, it isn't just us who show up, everything shows up. Our companies show up, our culture shows up, a school system shows up, a podcast shows up, a brand shows up, a color shows up. Everything shows up. This is a permission system because we bounce along this at every moment of every day. We're somewhere on that continuum, and we have to give each other permission. If someone just had a dental procedure and they're not quite as responsive as they would have been, and they're just showing up, we can show up with compassion for them. Like, they get to just show up then. Let's not judge them and be harsh and berate them and say, like, this isn't happening to you. It is showing up with you and for you. And how can we be there to help you? Right? So a boss shouldn't show up like, hey, your work is late. This is crappy. It's help me to understand what you're dealing with so that together we can make the responsibilities that you have now work with the energy and focus that you have, right? And then over a short period of time, we can scale you back up to getting done what the company really needs to depend on you for, right? So show up with that care.
Marcy, talks around showing up, maybe not conjugated with this specific term that you've come up with, have been around for a while, and yet they've been perceived as something that is a woo.
I hope not.
But now we are entering we've entered the age of Aquarius, and people are more and more perceptive to these theories that are now proven also by research.
Right.
How do you see the development? Will people be more open in the coming years, or are they more open to your talks? You've been to 2 TED Talks. How are people perceiving this?
Yeah, no, people are very much more open. I mean, whether people come to these concepts through, a mental health focused challenge that they have, a trauma focused need, the fact that people are disengaged at work, however it's showing up, the symptoms of modern society that teach us that we're a solo person aren't working for us. The medication that we're on, I mean, this and the side effects, like, this isn't working. Why are we here? Right? Why do I feel so lost? Why is my depth of relationship with my teenage daughter not as deep as I want it to be, right? So I think that there's a readiness there to change how we feel as people and how we move through the world. Otherwise, Lord knows we're going to keep depleting the limited resources that we have. Like we can't keep having a linear manufacturing system on a finite planet where we kind of make a whole bunch of stuff, use it for a short period of time, bury it and think it's okay. This is not working. We've already crossed 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries that are out there. And it's things like clean water, clean air, extinction of species. Like, we obviously can't keep existing this way. So I very much do feel that red flags are flying up everywhere. In our homes, at the level of the United Nations, at the global climate talks, in our elections, the red flags are everywhere. So I feel like there's a readiness for this. And for the other things that are kind of saying similar things in different ways. Yeah.
I'm actually seeing things developing in a positive way. Yeah.
What are you seeing that's showing that there's a readiness in society for people to actually enact change?
I am seeing more and more people noticing the corruption in lobbying groups that have pushed on pharmaceutical products that are very well showing that are harmful. Showing in the data, now data is coming out that statistical institutes for side effects of these pharmaceuticals. For example, in the Netherlands, 1 million records were deleted from such an institute. So such things are showing up more and more, be it on the health sphere or even corruption when it comes to, or the plans when it comes to wars and what's behind wars. And people are very open and very clear about the actual situation.
Yeah, yeah. We're all feeling it in different ways. And I think the messages that tell people to be more of an individual and to stand out are the wrong direction, because the way that people feel whole, the way that people feel calm, the way that we can just feel happier is by resetting our nervous system such that we turn our perception system on and feel others and are able to sit with ideas and concepts and kind of bring in the more of life that's out there that everyone's kind of supposedly taught about but doesn't always feel. So that's kind of the summary of it. And I have a lot of research that explains how we see even friendly faces as threatening when we're just showing up and just too busy and just moving through time without actually perceiving the wholeness that's out there. I mean, I've a lot of research that explains how just showing up kind of.
Marcy, how did you do this research? You mentioned a part of it was from research you've done back in the day in KPMG, but what about the rest of the research? What's the basis?
Yeah, so I started what I call evergreen research, which is an ongoing set of surveys that are out there. Every 6 months, I refresh it and send it out there. And I'm basically asking people questions like, to what extent do you ask yourself, how do I want someone to feel in my presence? To what extent do you do this? To what extent do you do that? And ultimately from there, I get levels of barely there, just showing up and truly showing up. So that's basically how I've done it. I'm also endlessly interviewing people. Like we're talking like on the line in the supermarket. I mean, this is my life. Like I would see someone pick up a magazine that has a certain cover and say, what do you think? Right? Like why, how did it become attractive to you that this says X? And they would say, oh, because of this. So I would all of a sudden have this major data point about something that's meaningful in someone's life. And then I would often ask, I mean, have you thought about this a long time, or like, did it just show up because it's on the magazine? So I'm endlessly doing qualitative interviews. Some are formal, some are informal. It depends on my stages of writing articles or writing books. And then I have my research that's out there. I'd be happy to send you the survey if you want to put it up. I mean, I'm always looking for more data points.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll do that. I'll put it in the
That's great.
To the video.
I'd love to hear from people. I'm redoing my website, but I also have it on my website. And I've actually just been told that I need to make sure it's refreshing because I think all the data clogged things. But anyway, I will get it to you.
Are you consulting people or coaching people on the showing up method at the moment?
So people are definitely calling me asking for coaching about it. I'm very selective about that, but I speak with as many people as I can to at least get them started and to create a plan. And the plan for everybody is different. Some people want to just do a little thing in the, well, not little, I mean, an important structured thing for 10 minutes in the morning about what are the most important parts of their day where they're going to make sure they truly show up and how are they going to do that.
Marcy, fantastic. Thank you so much for this talk. It was a true pleasure. Thank you. Any last words anything you want to end this?
Yeah, well, the book I think is still $1.99 or something on Amazon. Please get it. You don't have to feel like you have to read the whole thing. Just even look at it, flip through, read the things that catch your attention. Maybe what is readiness for your situations? What is grounding? What does all intelligence mean? How do you practice showing up for your business? Just feel free to do that. Feel free to reach out to me, and the website's out there, choose2showup.com.
Thank you so much.